I've underestimated projects before, but oh boy did I bite off more than I can chew with this one. Hello, I'm Miss Twisted, you can call me Charlotte. I do costumes, crafting, and other weird and whimsical stuff. And I have been slowly chipping away at this one project for like 2 years now. Fearne Calloway is my magnum opus. Basically, I'm taking so long because I want to make this the best work that I could possibly do. I've made the legs, the skirt, the corset. This time round we are making the props, most notably this staff. And let me tell you, if you like to see me suffer, you are in for a treat on this one because everything that can go wrong went wrong on this one. But we pulled through with some cosplayer audacity and spite, I guess. So let's get into it. All right, folks, the staff is going to be the star of the show, but before we get into that, I want to make the sickle and the horns. Both of these are going to be 3D printed because I have just gotten myself a brand new tool, the Elegoo Centauri Carbon 2. Yes, Elegoo is the sponsor of today's video. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the 3D printing side a little bit later. For now, I do want to make these props from scratch, which means I have to learn how to 3D model. Okay, here's the thing about 3D modeling and me. I have the mentality of a 90-year-old grandma when it comes to technology. Anything that involves computers or tech will take me like so much longer to learn than any other kind of skill. I struggled even to get basic shapes, like trying to put like one circle next to the other circle to make a crescent shape, but then extend it in one particular area and then put tiny little circles along the edge to make it serrated and then attach that to a different shape because one of them needed to be rotated and one of them needed to use something called loft. What the heck is a loft? What is a plain along path? Why did my sickle do this shape? Why this shape? I have this shape. Do the thing that I told you to, computer. Thank goodness for like people answering questions on Reddit and YouTube tutorials because that is the only way I managed to get to this finished sickle product. Turns out Fusion 360 is actually really good for these like geometric shapes. That's foreshadowing, put a pin in that. So with that done, it is time to print them. And for that, I need to set up my brand new Elegoo Centauri Carbon 2. Oh, that rhyming was so satisfying. Up until now, I've been using the OG Centauri Carbon and it is what got me started learning 3D printing. And I have been using it in various projects all throughout last year. And I'm keen to see what the Centauri Carbon 2 can do. So let's crack this bad boy open. That sounds a little reckless. Let's very carefully open this bad boy up. They described the Centauri Carbon 2 as ready to print right out of the box, and they weren't kidding. Any idiot can do this, and I know that because I'm that idiot that did this. And this really did take no time at all to get everything set up and start some printing. The enclosed chamber, tempered glass, and metal frame are there for safety and durability, but I reckon it's also why this machine is much more quiet than I was expecting. And if you're wondering about the 4 spools on the side and this multicolor print, the Centauri Carbon 2 has a feature called Canvas. Essentially, their multicolor printing system, and you can even paint the colors in the Elegoo slicing software directly. I just set up on the Elegoo Matrix app, and not only can you see your own progress, but you can literally watch the progress through the camera that's attached to the printer. So the ability to have filament changes mid-print that easily is definitely a major plus. I definitely didn't choose the most exciting colors to demonstrate that with, but I've been experimenting a little bit with like translucent filament combined with solid, and I think there's some really crazy potential here for some really interesting effects. With everything set up, it is time to print my sickle, and I'm adding a little negative part directly in the slicing software. That's gonna be where a rod sits to help join the handle and the main body together. And you can fiddle with the settings in here as well, but I like to just use the fine preset option. For most rigid PLA prints like this one, superglue tends to be a good go-to option, so that's how I'm assembling my sickle. Alright folks, are you ready for a bad time? I'm ready for a bad time. You guys are gonna have a fine time. You're not the one doing the sanding. To say that you hate sanding is not exactly a hot take. Nobody likes it. It's coarse and it's rough and it gets everywhere. But it's kind of necessary if you want those ultra smooth finishes that make everything just look really polished. Anyway, I'm all set up here to hate my life for a little bit while I sand these prints I've prepared. Okay, let's do this. I don't want to. The first part was kind of heartbreaking because this print came out so lovely and crisp, but I am blunting down all of these sharp edges because I don't want this thing like swinging around and like ripping into my costume, or worse, hurting someone else at a convention. First layer of priming, a spray putty. This is a high build, nice and thick, so it's gonna fill a lot of those gaps and layer lines that I haven't managed to get down with the first bit of sanding. Once this dried, it made it easier to see any seam lines that I hadn't managed to get done with the first bit of sanding, so I could fill them in with some spackling. And then of course, round 2 of sanding. My final sand was at 400 grit, which is probably overkill. I'm not really aiming for a mirror smooth finish here, but it sure felt nice. Except for the pure white hot anger I had at this tiny bit of dust that landed just after I sprayed my final coat of primer. So the sickle has had like 5 to 6 rounds of priming and sanding and priming and sanding and priming and sanding. Oh my god, you guys, these things take forever. This is the kind of patience I do not have. So the plan is coat of gloss black spray paint, coat of a ultra chrome spray paint that I'm rather fond of. Now, I've been convinced by people far wiser and more patient than myself to do a little test run before I spray my sickle, and this seemed to work out really beautifully. And I'm trying to be really careful with doing these light dust coats rather than drowning it in spray paint like my instinct tells me to. After last time, I'm really paranoid about having any dust on this before I spray it, so I'm wiping it down with a microfiber cloth, which is definitely overkill, especially for me who likes to do things all a little bit recklessly. All of that patience and care was worth it because seeing this print turn into the most smooth, perfect silver was so satisfying. And I am so happy with how this turned out. Like, look at the sheen of this. I've never made something this neat and crisp in my life. That is not an exaggeration. Which is why this next bit is going to be so nerve-wracking for me. You see this little, leafy area in here. Basically, I'm gonna fill that gap with resin, which is terrifying because I really don't want to drop resin on the rest of this thing. Side note, the Centauri Carbon 2 is printing one of my test bulbs in the background. I am incredibly impressed by how quiet it is. The fact that I can talk to you guys like this and it's not like drowning my eardrums out is great. So prep wise, I'm leaving this inside bit silver because I think at the most it's going to help reflect light back out to make that gem look a little bit more lustrous. I'm just gonna err on the side of caution and go with a respirator and wear some gloves. Talk about detail work, my camera can't even fully focus because this is too small and close up, but I literally have like these tiny little paint syringes to fill in these gaps with a little bit of resin and then blast that thing with some UV light and then go in and do the next layer. I'm doing this bit by bit just to make sure that I don't like accidentally spill out onto the surrounding silver. After a few layers of the most careful resin work I've done in my life, this is looking pretty damn good. So continuing the theme of going extremely extra for this cosplay, the handle has a bunch of gold sections, and for that, I'm literally going to use some gold leaf, or at least the imitation stuff. I don't have real gold leaf kind of money. Side note, join my Patreon to help me afford real gold leaf, I guess. Continuing my theme of being extra paranoid about ruining this, I'm just covering up most of the sickle to make sure I don't get any glue or gold leaf anywhere it's not supposed to, and then I'm just taping up the other sections. Now this stuff that I'm using is frog tape, which goes right into my pantheon of favorite cosplay supplies, right alongside my grommet press and my fragile tape collection. Honestly, I just wanted an excuse to bring up both of those things since they're not making an appearance in this video, so there's your cameos. Anywho, it's basically a better version of masking tape or painter's tape, but for the gold leaf, we're using this stuff called Quick Size, which is literally just like a very sticky, tacky glue that all of that gold leaf is going to stick to. And this was way easier than I thought. All you really do is wait a few minutes for the glue to get tacky, press the gold leaf over the top, and then brush it down to make it nice and smooth and brush off the excess. I don't know why, I just expected it to be much harder than that just because I think of gold leaf as like a fancy pants technique. From here, it's really just the weathering, and for that, I didn't really have a solid plan. I just kind of like filled in some of the darker gaps, added some scratch lines and some highlights and lowlights and things like that. I did have the genius idea way too late that if I hang this up, I can do both sides at once without waiting on one side to dry before I switch it over. Anywho, incredibly happy with how this turned out. And that's when I completely f***ed it all up. This one particular time, I had the hubris not to do any testers when applying a clear top coat to my lovely finished sickle. Why? Because the particular rattle can top coat that I was using, I'd used that a ton of times before and it worked fine, even on other metallic paints. I just hadn't tried it on this one particular brand of chrome spray paint. Turns out, it doesn't work on this one particular brand of chrome spray paint. With one spray over my finished sickle, I saw all of my lovely, beautiful metallic silver turn instantly into a shiny grey plastic. And this footage doesn't really show it, but trust me, in person, this literally just looks like a shiny flat plastic. It has completely taken the metallic out of the metallic paint. If this were any other project, I probably could have just left it as having like this weird matte grey finish, but this is my magnum f***ing opus, so I have to do it all over again. Guys, I was so upset, so much work down the drain here, and I actually didn't film much of my reaction to this because I just was too angry and frustrated to bother turning the cameras on. Anyway, after a grieving period, I guess, I sanded back those top layers to start the paint again. This time, we did testers. And I did my testers on test prints of the horns, which I was modeling while this was happening. I'll tell you more about that in a bit. We're going a little wibbly wobbly with the timeline on this video. Test number one, I figured the best option for the White Knight Super Chrome was to buy the White Knight Gloss Clear Top Coat, because why wouldn't two things from the same brand be compatible? I don't know how well the camera's gonna pick this up, but this bottom area is just the raw chrome over black, as you've seen before, that has that beautiful metallic shine. This side here is that exact same thing with the White Knight top coat applied to it. Can you see how that is basically just grey? In fact, that is more grey than the actual sickle that I used a different brand of top coat on. Hey, White Knight, how is it possible that you have made one of the best chrome finishes that you can get in a rattle can and don't have a way to protect that paintwork? How does your own paint destroy your own paint? That's so freaking stupid. Anyway, the brand SMS that makes these really nice chrome paints also makes a clear top coat for those chrome paints that preserves that metallic finish. And it turns out it works out pretty well on my rattle can chrome as well. Done, sorted, sand back the entire sickle, repaint the entire thing, including the weathering, and then we are back to having a finished sickle. This time with the paint sealed and protected. Now let's never do that again. Unlike the sickle, the horns didn't have like one big blunder. Instead, it was, I suppose, a comedy of errors, a series of unfortunate events, some might say. Step one, modeling the horns. The horns had to be not only a spiral, but a spiral with like a lot of uneven, irregular texture to mimic those ridges on horns. Essentially organic shapes. And I kind of had to just brute force some of the commands into doing things that I don't think they were designed to do. Error number one, once I had a shape that I was mostly happy with, I was doing a little bit more research on like Reddit and YouTube and found a bunch of people saying, oh no, Fusion 360 is not very good for organic objects. For that, you should use Blender. Are you telling me that I have spent like 5 days learning to use this one particular program for 3D modeling, which is literally not designed to do the thing that I just brute forced it to do, and I would have had far less issue if I just learned Blender for these? This is the point that I almost quit doing the 3D modeling and just found a preset model, because there's some fantastic models already out there that people way better at this have already made. But again, this is my magnum freaking opus, and I really am determined to do everything by myself to perfection-ish. Anyway, the first tester did print with a bunch of like weird little gaps just because I modeled these horns in a very unusual kind of way, but I did find a program called Mesh Mixer that was able to help like smooth out some of those ridges and gaps. Okay, so I finished a full set of these horns and I'm realizing that these are a little bit hefty. So I reprinted them and remade them from scratch. So they're about half the weight. And that's mostly due to the fact that I've gone for like much less infill on the printing settings. It does mean that they might be a little bit more delicate, so I'm not going to try and headbutt a wall, I guess. Oh, also this one here, I didn't put like any sort of hole in the bottom here, which I do want to have like as part of the model because it's going to be basically a little bit easier to attach onto here because I can put like a screw or a bolt or something like through the wig through there to kind of anchor it in place a little bit. Does that make sense? I actually ended up doing a third round of these horns because I found like the perfect combination of support and angle so that I could print them all in one go, which reduced the weight even more. I think they were like 50 grams each by this stage. Anywho, time for some lovely crunchy ASMR support removal. So once I had done a bunch of testers to find a way to keep these horns as lightweight as possible without sacrificing strength, I was ready to print my finals. Can you see the issue that I had here with printing these ones? Do you perhaps see a bit of an error that's occurred? I forgot to flip the model when I printed my second horn. Oh my goodness, these are like a 9-hour print. Oh my god, that's so much wasted time and filament. Printing two on the same side instead of mirroring them. Honestly, I think I just jinxed myself from the start, and each time I get more frustrated, I get more stupid and keep making these stupid mistakes. Anywho, 9 hours later, I had 2 correct horns, and because of the weird brute force way that I've modeled these horns, I still have a couple of weird little gaps here that I'm just gonna fill up with spackling. And because of all these ridges, it was a pain in the butt to sand these back to get into each individual gap here. And much like we did with the sickle, it's just layers of priming and sanding and washing and priming and sanding and washing. It just took way longer because of all these individual little ridges and gaps. To add another setback to my pile, my can of flat white primer basically exploded and left all of these little grainy texture on my horn, so I had to sand it again. Sorry to breeze past most of the painting, but I just used a flat brown base coat on everything, mixed up some lighter ones to use right on the ridges of each horn, and some darker ones to use right in the shadows. Don't you worry, you'll be sick of painting footage by the time I finish the stuff. So after all of the fiasco of the sickle and the horns, I kind of need a win, and I'm hoping that attaching these horns to the wig is gonna be relatively easy. We're not doing the full wig styling today. What I am going to attach the horns to as my base wig is this one here from Wig is Fashion. Not sponsored, not affiliated. I didn't even use a discount code for this one. I paid full price. Incidentally, I found out after buying this that my friend has one. So use Slightly Villainous as code if you want one for yourself. So fun fact, recently discovered that I actually have a large head, which is why I always get wig headaches. I thought I just got headaches because, you know, life sucks. I don't remember the last time I wore a wig that didn't instantly feel like I was getting my head crushed like a melon, so that's nice. So once I've confirmed how far apart I want them, I'm putting some screws through a piece of EVA foam, and I'm gonna put the screws underneath the wig and have them come up through the wig hair so that the horns can essentially slot on from there. Once I'm 100% set on the attachment, I'm actually heating up some Warbler to sandwich between the foam and the wig, just for a little touch of extra support. Ready to glue these in place permanently, I'm pulling out the hair from around the horn, filling up that hole with hot glue so that it fills up the gaps around the bolt and secures it into place. Not the best idea just because hot glue could melt the inside of the horn because it's just PLA, but it worked in this case. So ignoring the fact that the lighting's terrible because it's dark outside now, I don't want to change things up, and the wig is a bit of a mess now because I've been like flipping it on and off so much, but I think these horns are a done deal. Like, they're sitting nicely. I don't think they're gonna move. Like, I had to struggle to yank them off to get the glue on there to make sure that they were properly secured down. They are going nowhere. I mean, we could test run that. Yeah, the wig's gonna come off before the horns do. Okay, my darlings, the horns and sickle are done. We are up to the main affair. It has been an odyssey to get this far, and I mean that in the sense of like just a series of unfortunate setbacks, which means it's taken me way longer to get from A to B than it should have. I'm making a Greek mythology reference purely because I've been listening to a lot of Epic the Musical. I'm getting off track here. We are up to the main affair, the staff, the biggest of the 3 props, by a long mile. I think the first thing I need to do for the staff is work out exactly what kind of size I want. Basically make like a really slapped together mock-up of this staff. Yes, I know, mock-up me. I am going full tame for this one. No feral crafting here. So here's my laid out scrap paper, me for scale, and I'm just going to start sketching out the shape from what I can tell. I want the proportions to feel correct, but they don't have to be like exact ratios all the time, you know? Okay, hear me out here because I want to do something for the core of the staff that's probably unnecessarily extra, but I'm going to do it anyway. Basically, I'm going to be in stilts for this thing, right? And those fawn legs are pretty damn sturdy. Like, they're not too hard to walk in. They're basically like extreme high heels. But I don't usually wear high heels because I'm clumsy and they hurt my feet. So I expect to be a little wobbly on those stilts. Therefore, I want the core of the staff to be really strong and well weighted so that if I need to, if I'm feeling a bit unsteady, I can put a fair bit of weight on there. A wood pole is the obvious answer, but that's really straight and the staff is not. So I want to try something called steam bending. This is used for things like violins, real fancy tables, I guess. And I don't have to bend it into all of those curves, just the bit below where my hand is. And it only really has to be like a little subtle, and then I can build out the shape from there. So with a bit of help, I've basically MacGyvered together my own steam box. Okay, here is our setup. Don't know if it's going to work yet, we're going to find out. This is essentially just a big steamer. It's a paint stripper. And that is connected into here, which is essentially a layer of duct with a bunch of scrap fabric wrapped around it as an extra layer insulator, and then an extra pipe within that. And then my big wooden dowel is within there, and that is all zip tied to this piece of wood here to keep it steady. Right now the piece of wood is in there. On this end here we've got the little lid to the pipe with a doorknob we've glued on so that I can pull this off. I'm not going to do it with my bare hands. I've got some welding gloves so that I'm not going to hurt myself, plus some pliers if we need to. But we're going to leave this for about an hour to steam in there and see how it goes. After that, we've set up essentially like a little pegboard. So a sheet of scrap ply, which we can use these little pegs to like anchor the piece so we can kind of bend around them to get it into the shape we want. So we'll see how we go. The challenge here is usually you would do this with a lot more time, probably better equipment, and usually like a thinner strip of wood rather than like a circular dowel. Not to mention the fact that usually steam bending is better with certain types of wood, and this one is just the gum that was available at Bunnings. Okay, so it's been about 24 hours that this has been sitting here in the peg, so I'm going to take it off and see if, basically see if the steaming held any of this shape. Okay, the two curves seem to have held really well. Obviously, this is so subtle that I wasn't really like pushing my luck too hard. This one seemed to have had no issue. This one here, we pulled a little too hard and fast, and it's cracked on this side and a little bit on this side, plus like left a bit of a dent where that dowel was sitting. Not the worst thing ever, but at least this tells me that it can be done. Round 2, we soaked the dowel overnight in some water to give it, I guess, like more moisture, and tried to see if we could curve it a little bit more extreme, resulting, unfortunately, in another snapped piece of wood. Yeah, sorry. That's all right. Take 3. For round 3, I figured that some of the commercial dowels might have been kiln dried or air dried, so they're just too brittle for this. So I'm using a fallen branch of birch from my backyard. We're playing it safe by only bending it a little bit, but it does seem to be holding better than the other ones did. Okay, 3rd round of steam bending is happening outside. I have that birch branch. In the meantime, we can do the top bit of the staff, which is basically where all the extra curvy stuff is that turn into the snakes. For that, we have PVC pipe because it doesn't need to be quite so load bearing as the wood does. And PVC pipe is a lot easier to bend with heat than wood is. This one definitely requires a ventilated area, open windows, and a respirator. There are better ways of like bending the PVC pipe that don't involve having it completely fold because that takes away some of that structural integrity, but I was apparently too lazy to worry about that and will regret that later. I did at least have the foresight to make sure that I wasn't just like bending everything on the one plane, was trying to create like some 3-dimensionality to these things. Good morning, folks. It is a silly wizard dressing gown kind of morning, but this has been sitting here for 24 hours, so let's see if it worked. round 3. I'll be honest, folks, I was like aiming for a more subtle curve and then build up the rest of the shape later, but this was way more subtle than I was hoping for. Okay, now I'm feeling like the wizard robe was the correct choice considering I'm holding the staff. I will say, it did feel like an awful lot of work to go to just for a couple of very subtle bends that you're barely going to notice on the finished product. Next step for this thing, I need to strip the bark, I think, because I mean, if I want this to be fully treated before I use it, that's going to be a step. I started just stripping back the wood slowly on this staff. It actually was surprisingly satisfying once I got the hang of it, even though it was a bit awkward to start with. Eventually my hands started really hurting, so I had to stop and switch up to the Dremel, which worked surprisingly well on this thing. And it's a good thing that I switched up because it turns out I gave myself an RSI. Added it to the list of fiascos for this project, I guess. Just to get a little wibbly wobbly timey wimey, I didn't see a doctor until a few weeks after I did the whittling because the pain and numbness in my thumb had not gone away since then. So I didn't really start looking after it until after I'd finished this project. Anyway, Doc says it's not carpal tunnel, it just kind of sucks. Now that this is completely stripped of bark, hopefully that will really help with the other bits that need to stick to this. Also, I'm noticing even more so how completely unnoticeable the steam bending is. I have no regrets. I tried something out. I learned some new stuff, even if it didn't really do much in the end. So, the snake heads, right, at the top of the staff, you've got one with like a closed mouth and one that's kind of like snarling. I am absolutely not going to try and 3D model those. Like, I have already accidentally committed myself to a program that is notoriously bad for organic shapes, and I am not learning another one. Not right now. I don't think I could cope with that. It would be the end of me. So I'm gonna manually sculpt it. Okay, clay time. Oh, this stuff is like hard as rock. Is that normal for clay? I think I might just be used to foam clay, which comes out soft. Okay, give me a second to Google how to use clay. No judgment, all right? I have not done this in many years. Okay, apparently I've got to condition the clay like it's freaking hair. Okay, saucepan of hot water with the clay in a plastic bag, sitting in it. Let it warm up and then start to knead it with your hands until your hands hurt. Okay, I'm just gonna start mashing it into the table. Just to clarify, the timeline is all over the place in this video. Time is a weird soup, as Fearne would say. Basically, this all occurred luckily before I gave myself a strain injury in my left hand. I want to give them fangs that are made of tree, if that makes sense. So it kind of looks like it's all one piece of wood rather than like actual fangs coming out of an actual mouth. It's stylized. It's a start. Oh, that's way better. Okay, so I literally just needed to leave it in the goddamn hot water for longer. With my clay warmed up and softer, things started to go a lot smoother, pun absolutely intended. After learning to grapple with 3D modeling, being able to just use your hands for something like this feels so intuitive and just such a relief by comparison. In the illustration, Fearne snakes are very stylized, very different from previous illustrations of her. So I want to create some lines and ridges that are going to continue on from the staff into those snake heads. Okay, so I'm pretty damn happy with this as like a sculpt overall. And I could theoretically have just made the clay sculpture, baked it, and have that be the final product. Couple of reasons I don't want to do this. 1, clay is heavy. 2, clay is delicate. And I am very reckless when it comes to props. I can absolutely foresee myself like just leaning this against the wall at some point and it like just sliding and slamming into the ground. Number 3, of course, this entire project I am kind of using as an excuse to try different things that you can do with 3D printing, and there's been a thing I've wanted to try for a while. I am going to take a 3D scan of this sculpt and then hopefully upload this to my computer so I can fiddle with it more on there and prepare it for 3D printing. So that 3D scan you can do via your phone. There's like a bunch of free apps that will let you do this. I've never tried this before, so this will be a first for me too. The fact that one of the examples here is a raw chicken leg. Way to sell it to me. The app I'm using for this one is called Curie Engine, and I'm basically just gonna try and like take a video turnaround of this thing. All right, I think it just gave me a test run. Oh, it's so weird. Oh my goodness, what has it done underneath? Okay, hang on. You guys can't see anything I'm looking at. Okay, this is just the preview on my phone, right? So it's just literally the first try. but you can see that it has like fully scanned that snake head in. A friend of mine who's done this before suggested taking this outside to get as much daylight on this thing as possible. So shout out to Felifay because this definitely did the trick. Because look at how much detail this thing captured. This is crazy. I barely had to do anything to prepare this for slicing aside from create like a little ribbon shape to cut the mouth in half and rejig a couple of settings in the Elegoo slicing software. Okay, I am so happy with these snake heads. Oh my goodness, I cannot believe I sculpted these by hand and scanned them into a computer. That seems way too advanced for me. As to why I printed them different colors, I did switch temporarily back to white because I have tons of it I need to use up. But then I realized it doesn't look that great on camera and I can't see the details as well, so we went back to brown. This one turned out especially well, not only because it picked up those details beautifully, but in the slicing software, because I was able to put in that negative space that cuts through the center there and still print it facing upwards like this, it means if I've done this right, ah, yes, look at that. It's come apart so cleanly. And now I can take out all of those supports and I have these two different jaw pieces with a nice little cavity here where I can stick the batteries for the wisteria flower that's gonna hang from this guy's mouth. Oh, that's so satisfying. Yes. Perfect. Oh, guys, you know what I didn't do with this? I didn't do like a hole inside his mouth for the wire to actually come out. That's the entire point that I made this big cavity in his face for. That's so stupid. Adding again to my list of mishaps, I accidentally put on way too much super glue and managed to stick myself pretty badly to this snake head. I was a little bit worried for a moment there that I really just could not get this off my finger. But once my digits were free and the whole thing was sanded and primed, I'm just gonna glue this directly onto that curly bit of PVC pipe I've prepared. Okay, top of stuff looking pretty damn good, if I do say so myself. Obviously the reference art is 2D and this is not, so which is why I've kind of gone with like these slightly different angles for where the snake heads sit and where these extra little squiggly bits go, because I don't want to be able to like turn it in this direction and still have everything in one flat line because it would look a little bit silly, but I still want to be able to turn it to the side and have roughly that shape visible that you see in the reference art, if that makes sense. Good morning, my darlings. It is a hazelnut instant coffee with a bit of Milo kind of morning. I'm getting really frustrated with how slow the progress is on the staff, and I know exactly why that is. It's because I've basically chosen like 10 different new skills for me to learn and trial and error to make this thing, and it is a very involved prop, and I'm getting impatient with it, basically. Okay, wood staff, PVC pipe. Basically these two pieces are going to join together, and I don't think I actually have to do very much. I've glued this top piece, which is a smaller pipe, into this larger pipe, which actually is the perfect size to go directly over this wood. I need to figure out this. These things are wibbling and wobbling all over the place, and like I don't think it's going to be an issue in terms of strength, but I want them to look and feel rigid, right? That's definitely not going to be the vibe. What I should have used is one of these, which I think is called an elbow. Luckily, I remembered I had this thing that I bought from Aldi of all places, which is a PVC pipe cutter. And this is a game changer now. It is so easy to use, and it just made it very easy to like change over all of these weird folded corners into reinforced elbow corners. Once again, I would have saved myself so much time if I had just done this to begin with, but I guess that's just how it goes. Okay, tons of reinforcement right here at the bottom. There's like maybe a little bit of movement in this top one. I'm not that fussed about that. I'm not going to be vigorously shaking the staff anyway. So snakes on the top are reinforced. On the main staff, I've added this little doohickey, which is just where the last little wisteria flower is going to hang off. So aside from that, I think we're ready to give this thing some shape. And for that, I have got foam clay. Much like with my fragile tape, I accidentally bought a tub way too large for what I needed, which seems to be a running theme because I did exactly the same thing with Flex Bond. Like this is like basically my retirement Flex Bond. It is going to last me that long. Since the steam bending didn't really do that much for the shape in the end, I'm relying pretty heavily on just building up the shape with the foil before I get stuck into the foam clay. As for the foam clay itself, well, I find it a lot easier to use than traditional clay. It's very soft and squishy and just has like an entirely different texture, I guess. Day 1 of foam clay was just kind of finalizing and filling out all of the shape. Day 2 was basically just rolling out a ton of little spaghetti pieces of foam clay, I guess, and start to just lay them down on the staff and blend them in to create those sort of ridges that twist all the way down the staff. And I know I said it wasn't super important to be like 100% accurate in every way on this stuff, but I did try and get like all of the general lines and directions of these twisty vine textures to match the art, so I guess I'm a hypocrite. I was also trying to maintain a balance between having some sections really smoothed down and others where like I kept a little bit of like rigidity and texture, I guess. Those raised imperfect edges are going to be fantastic later on when I'm painting, just to provide a bit more rough texture. Good morning, guys. I'm feeling rough this morning. It's been about 3 days worth of doing foam clay, and it does look good. It looks really good. I'm just starting to panic a bit about the amount of time I'm spending on this one prop. It's been about 2 months of full-time hours on one prop. I've made entire costumes in 3 weeks. Well, I suppose it's not one prop. It's this prop and then also the sickle and horns. But like, I don't know. I've underestimated projects before. It's a regular occurrence for me, but never like this. And I'll be honest, guys, I've been fighting the instinct to quit. Like, it makes me want to quit. And I know this isn't the first time I've said this video. I'm seriously just thinking like, what if I just cut my losses here, painted this thing green and call it a day? Like, it doesn't matter if it's not comp quality or magnum opus or something like that. Like, just, it's too much. I can't allow myself to do that. I know I can't. I'm too deep in the weeds. But guys, I'm struggling with this one. It looks really good, and that's the only thing keeping me motivated, is it is working, but God, it's so slow. It's a slog. Side note, really glad in the end that I used a wood core, because like this is weighted so nicely. Like, look at that. It's so stable. That's gonna hold my weight so well if I just want to like lean right into it. All right, I'm feeling a little better already, just a little. So yeah, let's use that ounce of energy and do some plaster dipping, hey? So plaster dip is my primer of choice for anything that involves foam or needs to flex, because it's a rubbery one, so it flexes with the actual thing. The downsides, it's really expensive and it's really toxic. Flex Bond is another popular option. I was going to use it for this, and then I realized it would just take forever because it's like a brush on one. While I waited between layers of that drying, I'm starting on the bulb, the little lantern thing. This was actually one of the first things I tried to model, and it was surprisingly hard to just get it like hollow. It kept giving me these weird shapes that make no sense. I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. Anyway, I printed this one in translucent filament, so this will diffuse the light I put inside. As for the sort of leaf lid, that's getting cut out of craft foam, which takes really well to being heat formed with a heat gun, so I can get this really perfect little curly leaf shape. For details, I'm pretty proud of this idea. I'm cutting little tiny slivers of foam dowel, basically to create some like 3D veins to run down the leaves. Combine that with some scored lines with a wood burning tool, and these leaves are looking lovely and detailed. This time round I'm using Flex Bond. They're small enough and I have so much of this stuff to use up. Psych, I lost my patience, changed my mind, and then did a couple layers of plaster dip anyway. For painting, these ones got a spray of white, a spray of green, and then a light wash to get into all of those cracks. Yeah, look, I'm skipping over a lot of this stuff because you'll see plenty of painting with the stuff. Now these leaves are getting glued to each other but not to the bulb itself, so that way I can still take it on and off to get to the lights and batteries. The bulb itself is getting painted up with all transparent paints. We've got a transparent white, a transparent orange around the sides, and a transparent yellow. Honestly, I think I went a little bit ham with the airbrushing, but I might remake this at some point. Now back to my staff. After about 4 layers of plaster dip, we are coming in with some white base coat. The next layer was going to be a really nice brown, but the can just kind of like went everywhere, as you can see, gave me a bunch of new freckles on my hand. And this was a brand new can as well, not happy about that. add it to my list of fiascos and continue on with a slightly crappier brown paint that will still get the job done. At the very least, the green parts at the top and bottom mostly went by without a hitch, so that's something, I guess. I don't know how well the camera can pick this up, but like, the spiders have tried to make webbing in every little gap within like hours. Like, it's here, it's all through here. Like, these guys are determined to make a home on this thing. Even though I'm like clearing off the spider webs every single time, I feel bad for constantly being a home wrecker, but like, guys, make better choices for building webs, damn. We are getting so close to the end of this project, guys, and like most things, I tend to do too much instead of too little. And I went a little bit overboard with these dark lines in the crevices between these viney shapes. Look, my capacity for subtlety is just non-existent, okay? Especially once I start getting impatient. Luckily, my too heavy, too dark shading didn't look quite so bad once I started adding some dry brushing highlights. This is where leaving some of that foam clay sculpting rougher really shines, because running my brush along like with this flat side really sort of catches on some of those rougher edges and gives the most beautiful texture. In short, it looks less like shiny plastic and more like a nice textured wood. Well, good morning, my darlings, my loves. I was up till 3 AM last night painting this stuff, so if the footage looked incredibly crispy and awful, that's why. Okay, forgive me for not trying to get this whole thing in frame. I just don't feel like standing up right now, but the stuff is functionally finished. Shout out as well to AK Interactive or AK Industries for like the best matte varnish ever. Like, this has come up so nice. It was a glossy mess before. So yeah, the finishing touches comes down to foliage and flowers, and I'm gonna just add some temporary ones for now because I don't think I have the energy or the motivation to make a bunch of fake petals for this thing, so we're using cheap $2 shop stuff. I say that, but this is one of the wisteria I threw together this morning and it looks pretty damn good. Like, this is just, you know, $2 shop flowers that I've banged some airbrushing over the top of. Actually, just before I start on those things, please take a moment to admire my shirt. You guys might remember the bootleg merch style shirt that my friend made me in the last video. Well, it was her birthday, so I returned the favor. What can I say? Graphic design is my passion. Just to reiterate here, I do plan on replacing a lot of these like $2 shop flowers with proper homemade ones eventually. I just straight up ran out of time for this one, and I think I just need to see it looking finished to kind of re-motivate me to keep working on it. Okay, my darlings, we have a finished staff, which I could barely fit in frame as it is because damn, this thing is gigantic. But oh my goodness, I'm so happy. Look at this cool lantern. Look at the paintwork. Like, all of the details really came out nicely with like that shading and dry brushing. Like, I'm so happy with it. Oh, I'm so glad it's over. And now we've done the legs, the skirt, the corset, the horns, the sickle, the staff. This monster build is more than halfway done and I cannot wait to finish it. Forgive me for not wearing the legs in this footage. My backyard is practically on a cliff face. I just don't want to be tripping up on such a steep hill. Now, if you want to use any of the models that I've made for yourself, I have uploaded them to Nextprint for free for anyone to use. I will put the link in the description below. That includes the sickle, the horns, and the snake heads. Important disclaimer for something that I hope is obvious, but you guys have seen how much like trials and tribulations it took to even get something resembling models. So these models that I've uploaded are quite flawed. They're very basic. You might need to fiddle with them a little bit yourself, but they're there if you want them. I think it's one of those things where I always forget, if you're learning new skills or trying things for the first time, you need to factor in time to learn. You can't just do a thing and have it turn out perfectly the first time. Seasoned, experienced cosplayer once again flabbergasted that trial and error does sometimes involve error. A huge thank you to Elegoo for sponsoring this one. I am so happy with my Centauri Carbon 2. The link to the Centauri Carbon 2 is in the description below. Quick announcement from Future Charlotte here, but I am going to be in Adelaide for AvCon in July as a judge for the ICL competition. I'll be there alongside my fellow judges Vicos and Vampry, and I am so honored to be judging alongside these guys. I actively encourage you to consider entering even if you think that you're a little bit nervous about it or not sure if you're good enough. Seriously, Honestly, being part of cosplay competitions has been some of the most fun and memorable moments I've ever had in cosplay, and I really think that it might be for you too. But in general, if you see me at AvCon, please come and say hi. A huge thank you also to my ultimate supporters on Patreon: Artemis, Residual Images, Yuri, Robert Mischief, Mohegan Creates, Vera Lynn, Mix Randvi, and Michael. A thank you also to these other incredible Patreon supporters who are on screen now. You should come and join us too over on my Patreon. I post previews, work in progress, and sometimes exclusive mini videos that you cannot find anywhere else. And joining me on Patreon is the best way that you can support me so I can keep making ridiculously overambitious projects like this one. But just by being here, liking, commenting, subscribing, all those good things that keep the YouTube robots happy, you are supporting me. So thank you guys again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!